recording
I
is
will be
started.
jumping between screens, and I will be sharing my screen with all of you. So the first thing here tonight is the actual announcement about powers in JCB. Now, powers is a functionality that allows us to create our own library in JCB. And it uses namespacing and auto linking just like a library would if you were to include it through Composer. So it's a very intelligent little piece of step up for JCB. The functionality of Powers will be 2 years before it gets to the rest of the community. So currently we are putting Powers only to Pro members, and 2 years later we will make it public. We were going to keep it indefinitely, but I've been contemplating the fact that we will run into a challenge where JCB itself will start building itself with the new Powers area, and so people in the community will not be able to compile JCB without it. So I was sort of pressed, shall I keep it or shall I let it out? And so the only provision we made is 2 years from today, it will go public. But if you're a Pro member, then you'll have access to it even now from today. So maybe I should say something quickly about Pro membership before we really jump into everything here today. So the Pro membership used to work with a password that I email to you, which gives you access to places on on Docker. On Dropbox. If you have this password, then we moved everything to Mega because I wanted to diversify my backup sphere. So I moved everything to Mega, and we then had the same passwords actually. So you were able to still access them with the same passwords. It's just the links that changed. But you didn't have any trouble with that because I updated the link behind another link. So it was the same links you would use as usual. And so that's how the Pro membership extensions work. You basically made a donation, or you became active on the forum, or you contributed code, considerably amount of code to the project, and then you would get Pro membership. So we put up a page on the Juma component, JCB website, and where it explains to you sort of how to get involved as a Pro member. And so then something interesting happened, and that is that I moved to my own Git hosting platform called Gitty. So it's a nice application with which you can manage your own Git repositories. And so I moved all of the Pro membership extensions into this environment, and I'm able to update them quite easily from my developing environment now. And so instead of giving the Pro members passwords like I used to do, I rather give them a login place where they can log in and then access any of the code and get the latest updates on that code. Then to the rest of the community, if they want access to this, they also need to log into the same place, but they are not in the group that can see the source code of the components. They can only download what I call releases. Now the releases are public, but not the source code. So the source code will always be a year or so ahead of the actual release packages. And so that's, I'm probably not going to be, what's the word? Yeah, there might be discrepancies in the time frames, but I'm trying to keep it as regular as one of the Pro Member features previously was the ability to add header like namespacing or any other header script to certain areas of your Joomla component. So you had a plugin, actually a number of plugins that you had to install, and then you had another plugin which you had to link with your compiler, and then that gave you the option to add these, use this or use that header namespacing to various parts of your component if you wanted to use certain functionality that we are not shipping with it by default. So that was quite useful, and we have now basically integrated Powers with that very same plugins, because obviously the Powers also are working with namespacing, and so it made sense that we just, the same place we already manage namespacing in JCB, we just add the Power integration right there at the same place to avoid any sort of ambiguity. Okay, that's enough said. I have actually asked O to do a few things for us in preparation for today. So he hasn't been schooled on too much about how Powers work, and he was sort of able to get a number of things sort of in place. And everywhere where I saw him getting stuck, and where there was actually a bug, discovered a bug. So everywhere he got stuck or where he ran into a bug, I jumped in and made notes and fixed the issue, which now means that I will probably share some of those tips with you as we go. Now, for most of you, I'm not sure. I think probably most of you here are advanced enough that this explanation tonight here, it will actually benefit you. But if you're not really advanced, that means able to write your own PHP, able to work with libraries, able to manage sort of classes and functions and methods, PHP things, then this will probably go right over your head, and I'm sorry about that. Because I really designed JCB for my own application, I need it to be powerful in this way. Okay, I'm building more and more powerful components for my clients, and ends up in our helper class where we use the very abstract class in a very horrible way by making everything static. So we call it almost like a an overgrown class. So trying to break away from that bad practice and trying to now start having sort of chunk-sized libraries which I can reuse in various projects or specifically for one is the real reason for the Powers birth into JCB. So let me demonstrate some of that to you. So let me see, share my screen. I'm going to share my entire screen of where I was looking at your faces just now. So let's see, I moved that out. So you should now see my IDE, and I'm going to drag in a browser. Okay, so there is a website currently, you can even actually see it online. j3.vdn.dev is the URL. We'll just have it up for the session. I'll put it down later. The way that website was deployed is quite easy. I want to show it to you because I have my own server that has internet access running here in my offices. So I'm going to quickly SSH into that server. And okay, so I'm in that server now with my SSH. If I do octo view, that script I released earlier this week comes up. And if I go go to my Joomla containers and let's say edit available container, you see I have a few containers ready set up. We are now looking at this guy here. So if I open that configuration, really all that my script has done is it's basically created this composer YAML, Docker composer YAML file, where it's using some dynamic placeholders from an environment file, which is now obviously hidden. But basically, this whole system we are working on right now, behind this thing here, this system here, is running from this Docker compose file, and you'll see me edit files on this system, on my local system in my own IDE, which also is managed by this very same script. So if I just go out, there's the OpenSSH containers part of the script, which if I edit available containers, I only have 3 running currently, and one is Quiz. That's the container that makes the website available to my local development environment. So tutorials about the advanced functionality of this script that I released yesterday will still be upcoming. The current video that's out there is really just like an introduction, because I needed to show people the power of how quickly you can actually get things done. So it's really a combination of tools. The script itself actually lives also on that that same system I spoke of earlier, which is you can actually get to type in git.pdf.dev. It's this system, and if you look at this little lion symbol next to Joomla, click on that, you'll see there's that script. So if you've signed in here, even if you're not signed in, you can actually access this script. So I would encourage you, this is a very powerful tool. It's over 3,000 lines of bash. So if you know bash, this is going to be like, a big present gift, because there's lots of smart functions and implementation done to make that script run quite smoothly. And I've been hammering it quite immensely, and it's really stable at the moment. Okay, that's what this website is running on. So it's running on a external system. That's important for you to know. So if you go to the dashboard of JCB, you'll see there's now a new box with a nice blue elephant on it that says powers. I felt it quite fitting because that powers, is really a further use of PHP in JCB. And we know our PHP is having the elephant as one of the icons. So these are classes that O struck together for us for the implementation or demonstration here tonight. So he has basically tested out the class method, the traits method, and the interface. If you start a new power, these are the choices you will have. Would you want to create a class, an abstract class, a final class, interface, or a trait? So those are all choosable types of powers that you can create. And any one of these will change some of the available fields at the bottom, and some of them are not applicable. So if you choose interface, you'll see it updates the page, and so. Now, because we have already got a few classes set up, you will see that you can extend these classes, and you can use the namespacing. Namespacing is a different conversation. You can use the interface that already exists. So we have this animal interface set up, and it can choose multiple interfaces actually, which you can create obviously yourself. So one of the things that I actually thought would be possible to do, I wouldn't necessarily say it's necessary to do it because those classes are already available in Joomla, and that is to actually take a framework. So if we go to GitHub, Joomla framework, to look at a framework class which you maybe want to use. So So let's say you want to use the string framework class and go to the stores directory. You'll see that it has certain classes and certain folder names. To actually put those things in here as a trial, to play around with it. Obviously, if you open a class in that case, you will only take this part of the code because everything else is what JCB creates. Okay, so you'll be working with what we would call the inner part of the code in this area here. Okay, so the inner part of the code is everything from after the declaration of what you're creating, because this is the part which JCB actually does for you by means of your selections and setup over here in the upper part of your array. And then this is the namespace that you can declare this. So let us go out of this and look at some of the things that are created. So looking at the interface, he decided that he wants the namespace to be the component's name and then just animal. Here is a very good explanation of how namespacing will work. And I would say that if you've read this explanation and actually have questions that you feel, okay, that's not clear enough, then please open an issue. Except the only difference now, where you would have in the past opened an issue on GitHub, because this is a pro member feature, I would ask you to go to the pro member component and in fact open the issue here. Okay, so that I will respond to it, because it's actually a pro member feature for the next few years, and it will only then go public, so that it doesn't really, people in the public, I don't mind them knowing about the feature, but I would like to have a conversation about it here in the actual repository. So there is a new repository called Component Builder Pro. It means that JCB is diverging at the moment, where we'll have a version 2, which is the public version, and a version 3, which will be the pro version. And there is going to be slight differences, and eventually that version 3 will go public and merge with 2. So, but that's only after 2 years. So we'll see. There's also a version 4 coming as the solution for our block migration path. Okay, there's much to explain about that, and I hope you will be jotting down all your questions as we go, so that you can ask them when I run out of things to say, which doesn't happen quickly, but I'll try. Okay, so we have this has been a little bit of a explanation of how a interface would look like. You just declare either your properties or your class declarations that the required classes would need to implement, because that's the purpose of an interface, right? Is to ensure that certain methods and certain properties are in a class where it actually makes use of that interface. And okay, so I'm not going to be teaching you PHP tonight, and that would take too long. But going to the Lions class, we then see that it actually uses the animal interface, and because it needs to have the make sound, he has put that into the part, and he then used just this namespace of lion in his class. So taking this specific class, let's go to a component. So we have our demo component running here. And in our demo component, we have a side view called looks. And we can ask O from that checked out. We go directly to it. And we check that in. And then open it. Okay, so in the class header, we now have added, I'm going to remove this IDE for now because that's the next demonstration. We don't add the interface. We only add the class we want to use. JCB will take care of all the linking itself. He will discover, okay, this needs to be there, this needs to be there, and that whole sort of bag of underlining functions that needs to, or classes and traits and everything that's needed, it will create the whole library automatically just because you used one of the classes. So that's quite convenient, and actually the reason why I build it, because I don't want to think about that. I want to write my libraries, just use it, and basically does everything in linking it into my project. So I'm going to just add that, but because we are also already tested the IDE one, I'm going to just remove that little bit of code for now, so we don't get that error. So you basically see I just declare a new line here, and then just echo out the cell. I could probably have just, let's quickly look at that again. Hours, lion. Okay, we have an echo here, so we don't need an echo. Let me go back to the site view. Okay, I'm picking up a little bit of a noise on the sound. I don't know if there's, is it my microphone making that noise?
It's from our bit.
Oh my
Okay.
God, let me mute it.
So, there we go, thank you. As long as it doesn't affect the recording, it will be great. So we can actually directly echo this out just like that, right? Okay, so that's getting our line to raw for us. Maybe we can put a little HR here to make it a bit of difference. Save and close. Now go to JCB, compiler, compile this, and install it. So there's two ways in how JCB actually creates the auto linker. Okay, so because we need to use the same kind of namespacing linking mechanism that Joomla is using and which Composer is using, which is actually a PHP standard, part of the PHP standards of linking via namespace. And so JCB has two ways of adding that to your project. The one way is adding it to the helper class. Okay, so if you want to ship a component, you don't want like plugins and stuff, you just want one component and this extra library functionality, then that's the one way to actually link a library to JCB is through the helper class. And I'll show you in the code exactly how that's done. The other way is actually through a plugin, so that you actually install a plugin onto the site, which then actually auto-loads your classes, which means you can then use it across models and plugins, other areas where you may not be able to add the linking to the current mechanism I showed you previously. Let me say it more specifically, because I know my terminology might be confusing. So the way we link a tower right now is to actually add it to an area, right? And by that, JCB knows this must go into the project. But let's say you want to use a library in an area which we don't already target with this kind of linking. Then you want to link it somewhere so that the project knows about it, but then you want to put it in a plugin so that you can use the namespace wherever you want, and it will be available. Okay, so because it is linking via namespace, you don't need to do include or any of that whole implementation of linking files. So having now compiled it, we get this error that the global power, that's why I'm mentioning this now, because we saw this error here. And it tells us that there's not an autoloader plugin available. So basically they expect that JCB was trying to use the plugin path, but because I haven't created an autoloader plugin here in the system, which I'll get to later in the section, it gives us that warning that it's not here, and we'll basically come back around to this later. So I'm just going to install this. Now I have an IDE running on my local system, and as you see, after I've installed it, it updated here, and basically you only see that it added the basically we said target the site views default template header, and then we added this. So when we turned that on, we added this there, and that ended up putting only that line into the file. Okay, that's how it created the namespacing for us. Now, what does it do in terms of the actual component? So I'm going to scroll to libraries, which is currently where your library will be placed. Now, I'm just collapsing some of the files here, so out of the way. So here is our libraries, and we'll see there's a place called JCB Powers, which is the new libraries. Now, because I have already installed this previously, what I'll do now, just for good measure, is I'm going to just delete this and install it again, so you see what's happening here. Maybe let me close this and open it again. Oh wait, let me just go check it out in the file system. Okay, so it's back. Now let's open the IDE again. Not back. Come on. Okay, let me jump there because I don't want to waste time. So here's our JCB Powers. It created our folder demo, and inside that folder it created a source folder, and inside that source folder it added lion and animal. So if you open the animal file, it actually, sorry, the lion file. Come on. Here we go. It's back in here. Let's open it here. Get there. So there's the lion file, and there's the roar function, and there's the namespacing, and there's the. Now there is one important reality that when you install the component directly from the compiled package which JCB creates, instead of from the repository that JCB creates, then the htaccess.txt file doesn't get converted to .htaccess. So basically it's not active. Whereas if we go to the actual Git version of the project, so we go to here's the Git version, there the htaccess file is active. Now the htaccess file is important in libraries in Joomla because it really keeps the public out of those folders. So it needs to have the .htaccess actually on whatever system you're using. And if you're in a sort of outside of the normal implementation of Apache, you need to know how to do that within those environments. Okay. So this is normal. If we go to Joomla's own libraries folder, vendor folder, right? They have the very same convention. So we are following the same practice. It's a normal way of dealing with library folders, right? So that means we are not putting in the library class, we're not putting the normal die except if this they is declared. We're not doing that validation because basically library classes don't have that in Joomla. Okay, so that's some heads up for you to know. Make sure that your .htaccess file is shipped with your actual component by zipping your component from the repository, not from distributing the produced zip package itself. So that's how I distribute JCB. I distribute it from the repository and not from the zip package. Okay, and basically we probably could fix that if we improve the zip method in JCB, because what happens is we are zipping the package and it's not able to grab the dot file. That's really why. If we can improve that, we probably could have this sort of pain mitigated. Okay, so back to our implementation. We've got Lion here. Now, how does it get into our project? So if we go back to our component code, and then open demo, and we look at the helper class demo, we'll see that it has a new function called powers autoloader. And basically this is the what is known as the standard implementation of the autoloader register method in PHP. So we've written a dynamic function that no matter how many namespaces you have, we will actually upgrade this array here, and it will use this implementation to autoload the classes, to check out the path of where those classes are, exactly as Joomla itself does it. I know that Joomla has a autoloader class and a way to sort of give them that work to do, but I felt like there is enough reason for us to manage this without them, and it is made it easier for me to write this out automatically so that I could add it to the plugin without any pain. So that is how we get the class here. Now let's look at it in the browser. So if we now open the site and we go to looks, so you could try it out there on your side as well. Open looks, you should see roar, which is actually going from our script here, roar. So I can open my my Lion class, and I can change roar to, let's say, big roar, and then refresh this, and we get big roar. So that is kind of the function. Now JCB has this feature where you can include custom code placeholders, right? So let's do that quickly and compile and install our component again. And then you'll see that our class, that specific method, now gets wrapped with some placeholders. And I can now in the IDE format the method better, because I like my code nicely formatted. And then move this like that. And now to update that, I just add diamond in here. That. Okay, so we just add that little diamond in place of the dot. Hit Control S for save. And we can now say, hey, don't drop this big roar. We want to really make a noise here. And then simply compile this. Now, in the meanwhile, that is then what will show. So that's the current text. And if I now compiled and updated and reinstalled it, now you'll see my function is now nicely formatted with the new text right there. So you're able to start up a library in JCB, link it into your project, compile it, move to your IDE, do your code as you normally would, and then just get it, because what happened behind the scenes is that in the powers area, the actual lion class was updated. So it actually converts it back to as every other area of JCB works, right? So that functionality is also here in powers, and quite it's very useful. I use it all the time. Okay, so now we have demonstrated how to create a class, how to add it to your project, and how that then ends up into the library for you. Now let's go a step further and let's add another one. So we have the second class that we want to add, and we are going to add some extra code. Let me see.
I think it's run, if I remember, and then close this. Okay, so we have our IDE coming in to join us. Now, what makes the IDE implementation a little bit more exciting? It's got more stuff. That's really it. So to show you how that linker expands itself. So we added the IDE, compile that. While that is happening, we go look here, we see our IDE class, but then we have trade. Now what is trades? Trade is a way of having code which you want to natively make part of a class, not by extending another class, but by putting it in the class as if it was written in the class, so that you can still act with whatever is private and what is public, and all those kind of access layers for your methods. So it's like a copy-paste mechanism in PHP. So you can write this one trade, add it to multiple classes, basically sharing that code across classes. So it is custom code in JCB, but in PHP it's called trade. And so we were able to create that here. And we've now compiled it and installed that. Then we go to our IDE, and now we'll see that something must have happened. Let's see. Yeah, so all these files have now been added automatically, just because I added this one to my project. It knew and discovered that linker needs to be there, processor. Why? Because, let's see. Just try and bring it here. There we go. So because we have these use cases namespacing, and we are using it in our class so that we can use that functionality, JCB, because of how it links, was able to pull all those in for us automatically. And so if we now open our loops and refresh it, we see that all the code from those various classes are executing. And how you know that is basically each one of these classes of trades is basically just echoing something. So it's really generic, just to demonstrate the functionality. Okay, so that is a quick overview of the new powers area and why I think it matters and why it really is powerful. There are a lot of more detailed explanation required, for which I think I will make detailed tutorials about the powers area. I mean, I've touched on some of that, but I know in a session like this, a lot of that probably just too much information quickly. But one thing that you might realize
after starting to use it and may not have expected that, is if you change the version number, let's say you change that from 0 to 0.1, and you save, JCB will actually create a new item. Why? Because you might have, so what has happened now is there is linker and there is linker. So you have now two linker files or options. Because you may have had linked this version into more than one component, and now you want to make a change to it, but you don't want it to affect all the other components that are using it. So you can change it by incrementing the version, and basically if you now go back to the site view where we've linked it, we didn't link it in the site view, we actually linked it into the powers area right here in the IDE. So here we link, there it is, linker. Now if you have the drop down, you'll see that there's two options. So you're basically able to select whatever version you want in that specific implementation. And it's a way of me trying to mitigate unexpected results. You might be changing something and then mess up something else, not knowing. And I mean, that happens to me, and that's why I build this sort of improvement. So the moment you change the version, now if you change this one again to 1, so we're opening the one that we've changed, no wait, not this one, the first one here. And if we change this again to 1, and we try to save, it will actually tell us, okay, there is a power 8. If you click there, you can open it with version that already exists. So it sort of tries to mitigate misunderstanding, and if you then click here, it will open that new one you made, and you can work on it. So that's, I don't know, nice to have, but it's, in my opinion, critical, because this workflow will grow and will become quite a lot. So one of the functions that I hope Emmanuel will help us implement is the way to filter this by component and to filter this by maybe relationships. So that's part of the filtering mechanism we definitely want to introduce into the powers area eventually. So yeah, that was a lot. Maybe let's start with some questions.
Well, first of all, this is really cool.
It's a wow.
It's really cool. You can do a lot with it. But you were talking about Docker at the start of this.
Yeah.
But that is pretty much a separate thing from the powers, right?
Yeah. It's just
right.
The Docker part was merely me telling you, those of you who followed the release of that extension yesterday, that everything we're doing today is running in that. That's really it. So
okay.
It's not related to powers. In fact, it's public and anyone can use it. Whereas powers is only for pro members for the next 2 years, and then it will go public. Yeah, so I'm quite excited about this. Now let me change gears. If any other questions, I want to change gears into explaining how the plugin integration will work. Yeah, I'm sure you'll all only really have questions once you start, messing around with it. So, okay. I have another system running which is local. So this system I'm about to show you is actually running on my local machine. Here it is. So this system, I already imported the changes we made to the other one here, but then we've made some more changes. So what I'll demonstrate now in this moment is actually a way to
migrate again your components between your different JCB installs. So I'm gonna basically, I'm gonna export the demo component here by going export JCB package. It gives us a key here and it gives us a path where the package is now. I'm gonna grab that path because I need to just download it from there. So I'm gonna put that in here and download that zip file. Any of you who want to download it during this session, you're welcome. Because we will anyway take down this website after. So if you want to download, that's the link. Info folder, JCB underscore demo uppercase public.zip. So that's the JCB package. I'm going to go to Powers. This website is called Powers, and I'm going to import this package. So what you'll now notice is that we've already integrated the Powers area with the actual JCB package import mechanism. It might still be, I'm still teasing it. I was hoping to have a session with France to spend some more time on it. But yeah, it is what it is. Let's see, which one is it now? 7. Any of these? This one. I think it's this one. Okay. So we're going to import that. And then this is the key you will need. So if you want to pause the video, we'll probably put it on, and then you'll be able to grab the key. Well, let me bump it here in the channel. Those who may want. There we go. I mean, it's just to give you access to the trades that it just does, the trades and the classes, the demonstration of that. It's really just a demo component, so it's not that smart. Okay, and I added the key here and import. So now we've updated this current system, which means if I go to Powers, there's all the Powers now being imported with all the changes that we've made. So if I go to the Lion class, for example, okay, it's that one. Oh, it might be that the timestamp are different, so we might need to force it. It's not a big deal. The point is we've moved all the Powers across. Why? Because I want to demonstrate the plugins here. I've got them set up here. So there are a number of new plugins that, actually two new plugins, and then all the previous plugins have been updated. So the JCB header compiler plugin has been updated. The component header, the custom admin header, the site header, the admin header. These plugins were all updated. They now actually allow you for that power integration that I showed you earlier. And so also having pro membership access, you will be able to actually see how we build it. How did we able to achieve this kind of functionality? Because the compiler itself has events and it gets triggered, right? So you're able to hook into the compiler and actually integrate things with it. So that's really what we've done, and actually adding powers to the system. But now the JCB autoloader compiler and then the powers autoloader. These are two. This one is JCB related, and this one is what you will distribute with your extension. Would you want to have your plugin loaded via, your namespace in your classes, loaded via plugin? Then you would use this one, and it needs to be in the system. Now, when I say in the system, this is not the system. This is JCB. This is where I build it, right? This is where I create those plugins. Whereas this one needs to be installed. So if you actually go to plugins, you should see that plugin here. Okay, this is the tabs. So
Now the autoloader, it's in this autoloader plugin where you must select the plugin that will be used to build your components autoloader. Is it getting too much? Let me go slower. Okay, so we have a plugin that ships with JCB, and this plugin links to a plugin which you will ship with your extension to load your library's namespace. Okay, so it basically moves the autoloader that we looked up earlier. So earlier we looked at the autoloader that JCB built. Right here it is. It moves that autoloader out of the helper class into a plugin, so that it is a global event and makes it available anywhere in the world, and not just in your component. So really that's the power of the plugin, and you may not need it if you are using a library code that really just messes with your own component and you're not using it elsewhere. Then this is the best way. You know, it's gonna save you sort of tutorials explaining to your client how to do this and that. Whereas if you want to target models, and if you want to target other areas of your system, maybe you want to share the stuff amongst multiple components, then this plugin is the more convenient way. So it's really about what architecture you're looking at. And so this plugin is, in my opinion, more intelligent, but it does require this little bit extra steps. Now, you might have some components with it and some not. And this is quite important because we added this option to decide which components should use the plugin and which should use the helper class implementation. So if you want to not let all components use the plugin, you need to come here and then select the components you want to let the plugin work only on those. So that means the default is the helper class, and the components you select in this plugin will then make use of the plugin method. Okay, so that's sort of the two ways. Now, when I click on this drop down here, it gets a big list of all the available plugins in JCB right now. Okay, so it really picks that list from this list. So that's why it looks a bit overwhelming. But you are looking for that one. And why? Because that plugin you could build yourself. Okay? So you don't need it from me. You can just create your own plugin. Okay? There's only one part that is critical, and that's this little line here. That's the little line that is critical. Why? Because JCB will target this line and add the autoloader in its place. So it will grab the file of your plugin and it will update that little placeholder. And so you can actually change this plugin, and I'm targeting the construct method of the events class, of the plugin. It might not be what you want to do. So instead of me saying this is how we're going to do it,
We should consider that is basically
you
like
could
calling
decide
this.
to use another event. Okay? You could move it wherever you want. That's sort of the common trend in JCB is I want to leave it as open and as maneuverable so that specialists can improve on what I've done. And they don't even need to tell me if they don't want. In terms of just implementing the things in a different way. Okay, so that's really how that plugin looks like. I would suggest that you give it a name that is fitting your component. So we have this placeholder method in JCB. Most of you that use JCB a lot knows about placeholders. So placeholders is dynamic things that you can use the same plugin in multiple projects, and automatically those names change, right? So that means this plugin, if used in other components, will automatically use that component's name as its name. Now you can even use other placeholders. I'm not going to demonstrate that now, but this is the default way the plugin should look like, which will load your namespace's autoloader method. Okay, so that
that means I have now in the plugin selected that one. You see powers autoloader. And it shows that component placeholder as part of what its name is going to be. And so that's it. And I've saved this. And we are targeting at the moment the demo component. Okay, so I'm going to close this again. Now this plugin has been installed here. So the only reason you see it in JCB is because I wanted to show you the code and I wanted to give a little bit of explanation. But it's already compiled and installed, and it's the one we've just edited and saved. Okay, so that's where that comes from. Now going to the compiler, I'm going to compile the demo component here. And as you can see, we don't get those errors we got earlier, because now it was able to create the actual plugin. Okay, so there's the plugin for the autoloader. There's the plugin for the privacy suite integration, which is an old pro member feature, which is now public. And then there's our component. So I'm going to go to those zip packages in my system. They are living in my local environment. And for a moment I'm lost. Okay, here we go. Okay, they belong to the W data. I'm going to quickly just fix this system's permission because it's one of the pages we're still working on with Docker. So we'll be splitting up this one. It's the file permissions of power. Yes. Now, as you could see in the previous implementation when I was working on the remote system, I didn't have this, because using that OpenSSH container to bring our data to my local system, I'm mounting it in the right user capacity so that we don't have this collision of permissions, which I will actually eventually make a nice tutorial about, demonstrate and explain sort of more specifically what all that is about. Okay. But that little update I've just done there should give us access to these files. I hope you can see. So I'm in the wrong place. That's why power to the left. Okay, there we go. So here is the powers plugin. And so it's the demo powers autoloader plugin. And if I open that PHP file, you see that it basically moved that autoloader code into the plugin. So that's all it's done. And if I install this now, I'm going to close all this again and click install. Then open this again and just quickly change the IDE so that we are looking at this other system instead. For some strange reason, it doesn't want to show this file, this folders now. having overload here. Okay, so while I mess around to get this going, is there any questions? So there you see the demo autoloader plugin was installed. So if I go to the website plugins, I can now control that library's loading via a plugin. So there it is. I can disable it if I, I don't want it. But if I enable it, then it will be loading the namespacing automatically. Okay. So let's quickly move the menu. Let's say home. Change it to demo. Looks. Save and close. Open that up, and you see it still loads our code as we saw it loading on the live system. My ID is now frozen up on us. So I'll just use the folders here, which means that in the components area, if we go to demo component helpers, and I open the open the text, you'll see that the helper method isn't here. The autoloader helper method is no longer in the helper class, so it definitely is not here. And so it is definitely loading the helpers that it needs here in the looks. So if we open this file again, we see that it loads these two namespaces for us, and our plugin takes care of putting it into our page. Okay, so that's showing you the plugin approach. I think it's a little bit more technical, probably, but it's only once you've wrapped your head around it, it gets easier, I'll tell you now. It's really not that complicated, actually. It sometimes looks complicated in my view, in my systems, because I'm probably showing too much of things. But I will be making tutorials of the Powers use case, or rather implementation, more sort of how to create a class, how to create this, how to create that. More specifically, I'll actually make a playlist for the Powers, and I'll put it, all those tutorials there for you guys. So that's the release or the demonstration and making public, implementing self-maintained libraries in JCB. Now, JCB has a functionality which is not that commonly known, because my wife, when I first explained it to her, she said to me, "Why don't you just copy-paste this stuff?" So, and it's a way to basically copy-paste the stuff from an exterior file or exterior link. Okay, so let's say you have code on GitHub, and the actual place where we are in our project currently using this is I have a Git, or how do you say that? Git? I'm not sure. I have a Git where let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, dynamic content. So we have banners across JCB, okay, which are showing, like if you go to the compiler area, right? There's a banner here, and if you click on it again, it shows another one. And if you click on it again, it shows another one. Now it shows Joomla. Okay, so these banners are actually, the code of it is living in this Git. Okay, this is where the code for that banner lives. And the idea about that was, I was hoping a team will rise up around JCB to says, okay, we'll start taking care of getting people to help us, and we'll give them marketing options to put banners. Okay, so it's maybe I am over eager about stuff, but anyway. So we created this little way that you can include code from this exterior source. Now people will say, yeah, but what if someone changes the source? Basically, the moment it detects there's been a change to the previous code you put in, it actually makes a big red notice on the moment of compiling. And if you are not in the correct team that is allowed to allow external code, then it won't, and it will, in fact, it will strip the code from the project. So it's got a bit of a measures of safety there, which I'm sure, I'm always open for improving that. But the reality is I've added an extra feature to this function, which allows you to cut the code. So what that means is, let's say you want to cut away the first 10 lines from the top and the last 20 lines from the bottom, and you only want to use a certain part of the actual code, then you cannot do it. So it's a copy and crop and paste. So it sort of puts all of that together. Now, why am I mentioning that now? Well, with the new powers area, that would allow you to make use of code in your projects from anywhere, just with that convention. And it is quite powerful. So I would say use it with caution. Don't use things and not give credit. And when you do use things, give the right credit since you can do so with comments above that or snippet. And if you use it for yourself, like I'm doing it in my case, all of my methods that I use that is on my own code, then I mean it's okay, But yes, it gives you tremendous ability to integrate with things. Now, what is the advantage of that? Well, let's say people outside of your system improves that code, you will get a notice that the code has changed. So it's almost like a reminder. If somebody improves code outside of your system, you get notified, oh, this code has changed. So you can give time to it, look whether your cropping mechanism is still okay in terms of number of lines, and then to update that if you like. Now maybe it's a feature that becomes a white elephant not being used. But the other part of it, now we've spoken about an URL, is that it can also target a local file. So it's not only URLs out there in the web, you can also target a local file which the Apache running at that moment has access to, and can actually use that code in basically anywhere. So the function is called, if I can cheaply pull it up here, external code, is what it's called. And the one project where we are using that is actually in Sermon Distributor. Actually, I think there's a few projects that use that code. Let's see. It's this Mime Types. So what we have here is we wanted to have functionality of a very well documented Mime Types for uploading files. So we wanted to make sure that we get an updated list of Mime Types. So I created this sort of bash script that updates this file of all the different file extension Mime Types, which lives in this repository. So, sorry, this Git. So again, I'm using a Git to do this for us. So we have here the Mime Type builder array, and here's the Mime Types, and it gets this from the Apache project. So this was a very good reason to do this outside of my own local environment, so that I can run this elsewhere, keep this updated, and use it in all my projects and have a consistency of the legal allowed file extension types. Because then what we do for our component is we let the end users decide which type of files they want to allow, and we have this exhaustive list of types of files, which is probably an overkill, but anyway, this is basically included into the project with these three strings. So you just use the external code equals and the URL of where that must be fetched. And I will make a new tutorial soon to show how the cut functionality will work. I don't have my notes ready on that tonight, but I wanted to mention that because it is actually part of the new features that we'll be working on. Okay, we are again at the next pause and 15 minutes over 8 o'clock my time. Is there any questions at this point?
Well, it's not really exactly on the code itself, but I saw you earlier also using like the diamond shape to search to replace when recompiling. Is there a place somewhere where it just has like a list of these shortcodes? Because I'm just kind of figuring these out as I go, and I just learned about how to do the diamond thing, and that would have been very useful a couple months ago. So I don't know if is there a space where I can.
The current problem is the project has grown far bigger than me, so much so that I just can't get to everything. What I did initially to try and mitigate that is I recorded hours of boring tutorials and dropped all these little crumbs all across the street. And the problem with that was that it is very hard to necessarily know where I set what. So what we did is I hired a team of not translators, language, I don't want to say specialists because they wouldn't call themselves that, but they were much more savvy than myself, and they helped me convert all those tutorials to text. First, I used the code Python script that just converts it all to text automatically, right? And then they read through it to make sure that the grammar still makes sense, because Gladden speaks quite a difficult English, his own English, sort of. And so they helped sort of try and mitigate some of those pains. But at some point, my funding ran out, so I couldn't continue supporting them. And so that still is standing, and it's still quite powerful, and it lives on the repository of JCB. Okay, so if you go to JCB, you go to the wiki area. If you could search the wiki page, so I think there is a shortcut to that, but if you could search the wiki pages with text, I think I could have posted, I don't have it on my memory right now, but you can target the wiki and search it. And like for example, if you were to search the keyword round trip development, the wiki is full of places I speak about, and if you start zooming into some of those keywords, you will find places where I talk about it. That's the closest we come to current documentation around JCB. If there's an area you want to know more about, search the wiki, and it will give you probably enough information to get what you should be searching if you don't find the answer immediately. And then there is the reality that I'm constantly trying to, at the moment, there is a sort of a pause because we are transitioning from Joomla 3 to Joomla 4. You must understand JCB solves tremendous a lot of parodies in Joomla 3. We just last night was discussing some of that. For example, Joomla 3, if your admin view does not have a title field, then your permissions area JavaScript breaks. Okay, so it's like, how did that happen? If a admin view doesn't have a title field, then the JavaScript breaks around the permissions of your. Now, when I say permissions, I'm talking about this. Exact example of that. So I'm talking about this permission area here. So if you don't have a title field, so how, you know how long it took for me to know that? I don't even know what the problem is. And then someone on the forum, they didn't want to let it go, and they kept on pushing, and I kept on searching. And eventually we discovered that the error is that. And so we went about and we wrote a solution. So if you now today, if you look at the JCB itself, and let's say you open one of the forms, I'm just going to choose one. Maybe it's not going to even. Maybe it's going to have it. Choose another one. But let's say we take class methods. And as you scroll through it, you suddenly see this strange little string here. And it's like, what? What is this hidden title field doing here? And that is the parody that we're solving. We're solving an error, and JCB catches that your view doesn't have a title field, and it puts this hidden field which doesn't get stored to the database, but actually gets dropped before that. And it's empty, and it needs to be there, otherwise the JavaScript acts up. Now, that's just one of many problems we solved with JCB for Joomla third-party extension development. And now moving to 4, a lot of these things they must go away, right? Because they're no more applicable. And that is some of the I would call it swamp swim through, to make sure that we do not continue using these things. For example, the history integration in Joomla 3, the amount of code that you have to write to integrate every one of your views with history in Joomla is almost twice. I mean, if I open JCB's JCB script file, I mean, this is the most frightening script file I've ever seen. But why did it become like that? Because the only way for you to have that kind of integration with Joomla was to actually put data in the tables, and then to, when the component uninstalls, to remove that data again. And so JCB built all of that code automatically for everyone all this time without any of them knowing that it's being done. Now in Joomla 4, all of that is gone. We now have to completely create a new approach as via plugin integration to achieve the same objective. So one of the things that probably most people have said when they've been introduced to JCB for a length, let's say about 6 to 3 months, is that this extension is every day coming forth with more surprises of excitement. It's almost like just when you think you've learned something really interesting and really powerful, you discover something new and you didn't even know was there. And that's because I tried to solve every problem whenever I encountered it, all across all my projects, all those years I've been using it. So it means that with every project, I didn't want to hack my code that I was using with the compiler. I wanted to improve the compiler's intelligence
to actually solve that problem for everybody now optimally. And that is why some of the delay is currently on with us in the preposition for. And that's why the documentation is sort of on a pause, because since a lot of things happening in 3 will no longer be a problem in 4, and now there is again problems we didn't have in 3, we will have to mitigate again in 4. So trying to deal with all those, I call them parodies, you could call them edge cases, other people can call them whatever. We're going to have to displace those, and we're going to have to try and solve them in the same consistent, because really the essence of what I try to achieve here is absolute consistency. And that means if you build something and you compile it 1,000 times, it always produces the same result. And the way that I prove that this is what we've done is I've taken at least, is it now 5 or 6, I can actually check, but demo components which I gave away, where people can compile those across all various different systems all over the world. And those components, they all have their own repositories, right? And their own code on GitHub, public. And I invite you to go look at those repositories and see if anybody actually reported about it. And that's 5 years. 5 years maintaining those extensions, and we've hardly had any bug reports. And that was the consistency we were looking for. We were looking for a way to create a tool which keeps on producing a very consistent outcome. And I think we actually do have that. And the great news with the arrival of Towers in JCB is that our whole compiler will now be slowly changed away from its bestiality into a solid approach. So when I built the compiler originally, I built it in what is known as an array architecture. It's an old school implementation where you basically manage things in arrays. And now moving it over to an object architecture, which is more solid based, is part of what now will happen with ours in the game. Okay, I don't know, that was a big answer to a small question. Sorry about that. I overdo things usually, but
I will, because I'm probably not the first one who, like you said, like discovers something new. I'll put up a discussion item on the Git, just with the invitation from other people to invite what they know. I know probably not even 1% of everything, so I'll just put it up and go from there.
okay, so another thing I probably could have just given as the real answer here, but there is actually a document in the wiki that actually answers some of that. Okay, I'm sorry, I could have made it quite simple. If you go to the wiki and you open the 77 pages, at the very bottom of those pages there is custom code tips. Okay, so that is where the original custom code implementation was documented by one of the contributors, Chris. I think it was Chris who did it. Yeah. He did a good job, and probably this is the place we would like to update, because since this document was made, JCB improved this area so much that it actually introduced a new, and this functionality that I'm showing here still exists and still works, all of it. But then after this functionality, Marco was saying to me, Llewellyn, when I create code in the GUI of JCB, where does that code come out? Can't you put placeholders around it so that when the code comes out, we can see where it comes from, so so that we can know where did we write it into the GUI. So I added a new feature, but then I went further, and that's also after collaboration with other volunteers, that you can then update that code and write it back in the same place. So that is an extra step that we went, whereas this, which you're looking at now, allows you to add code anywhere, not just where you are able to do the GUI, but anywhere. But this one, this implementation, I have started discouraging for the reason that, you know, if we make big changes to how JCB, let's say Joomla improves something, okay, and now we're going to improve JCB to follow suit. If you've done a lot of custom overriding, then it's your bad day, you know. Because suddenly much of your code won't get placed in anymore. You'll get all these notices. Now we did try to deal with that amicably so that when someone discovers that code no longer can be placed in back where it was, we actually give you a notice and we uncomment the code so you can manually go fix that. But it's still a pain, especially if you've done a lot of it. And I know because I've done some projects, I've had to change because of deadlines and time. I had to move outside of JCB, you know, in a way that I wasn't comfortable with, but I had no choice. And then later, those were the projects that, you know, came back to trouble me. Okay, yeah. So please open a discussion. Please, you know, if you want to improve some of the actual documentation in the wiki, I mean, go right ahead. I think it is open to edit for anyone. Any other questions? So, Emmanuel, anything from your side? I see you've been dropping in and out all evening.
Oh, sorry. No, I have a very bad connection, that's why. My internet connection is very unstable, so that's why it cuts and comes back.
Okay. So, if there's no questions, let me then talk about the Joomla 4. I've already started touching on that, and I probably must just admit that I haven't put enough time into this as I may have had to, and it's because of my own responsibilities to my clients. The client who has been quite eager for me to move JCB to Joomla 4 started making the suggestion that we put their project in 3 and then later move it to 4 because of also deadlines and wanting something on the table before the end of the year. And so, yes, that sort of put a bit of a hold on my, you know, enthusiasm. But I must tell you, the amount of work that's still left for us to have a legacy Joomla 4 extension is probably possible to be finished if I give all my time to it, maybe a week, maybe 3 days. So it's really not, you know, that big of a job. I actually, all the changes that has been made so far, O has been the biggest contributor to that. So what I asked him to do is I asked him to take the demo component, change it until he gets it installed into 4, and then basically keep out all the errors and make a sort of note of that. And some of you may have followed that conversation because he started posting that to one of the issues on our repository. And then I took those remarks he made and just adjusted the compiler. And it took me, I think from the moment I started till I was finished with all the changes, I think it was an hour. So that means the work in the compiler to improve it so we can push for 4 is really not that much. And the only reason the compiler compiler is frightening to others is because I wrote it in a way that only I understand how it works. File, you find where I deal with it just like that, and you're able to change it completely because I do everything once. I don't do it multiple times. So if you think about where am I building the attributes, it all happens in a little part of this class just here. And where do I build the fields? It all happens here in this little area here. So that sort of makes it easy for me to know. I'm not afraid to change it because I know it's only done here. Whatever I do will affect everything from this place. Now that's the kind of mind that you would have in a solid environment. Now solid talks about a object-oriented design pattern called solid. It's the sort of aspect that those of you must know that. And so when I say solid, I'm not just meaning strong. I actually mean good design, PHP design, and so when you have that kind of design, that's the kind of mind you will also have. If you open a class, you know, okay, this is the main guy. If I do something here, it affects everything. Now we have that kind of behavior, but it's in a different type of architecture. So it's like I never knew Uncle Bob, and I sort of designed my own good architecture, and only later found out it's bad. But may I frighten some of you? I built JCB 6 months after I learned PHP. So I don't actually feel that apologetic for what I did. I think I did a great job for a beginner. So we're going to do it better now this time around. Since then I've obviously got verified, studied, and feel quite ashamed of some of the things I've done. But I still think we've got a brilliant tool here, and it can do still anything. Okay, that's plus 4. I don't know if that sounds like an apology, but it was one. Sorry guys, I'm not there, but I'm on my way. Yeah.
Leonard,
Yes.
any idea when Joomla 4 for JCB will get close?
I still want to keep to the promise that I want to have legacy before the turn of the year, which sounds a bit almost impossible to me, but I still want to do that. There is reasons for it, which is personal, but I'm still hoping that this. So if you ask me for a time, well, that was 2 weeks ago, and so I definitely want to still try and get it done this holidays, if not something else. And if it's only going to take me 3 days, come on, I must somewhere be able to crank out 3 days. So that's what I hope for.
We're glad with anything you can make. I'm just curious, you know, if you would have said February, I'd be happy to.
That's probably worst case, yeah. February is worst case. Because
What, you mean 2023, right?
yeah, at 2023 February, that would be worst case because then I would have died 2 times over. Yeah, the thing is, the longer I delay this, the more pain it causes me because I will need to redo things which I'm being forced to do now. So I am just as much under pressure to get this out as some of you are hoping I would. So it's mutual.
Good. Thanks.
Well, I thank all of you for coming tonight.
if there isn't a lot of questions about what I've shown, why did I say, was it goodbye? I want to know, is there some of you interested that I show more about the Docker stuff, or are we going to leave that for tutorials?
Well, in the Docker thing itself, it says it's not available for Windows, and so it's only available for Ubuntu and something else.
Yeah, it's only available on Ubuntu, but you could run a Ubuntu image on any system, right? And it's awful, I know, but the advantage of that is also quite, yeah. But like I said, if you've got another solution going, then you don't mess up with, the setup. I obviously live in Linux and use Ubuntu basically all the time.
Yeah, I'm a filthy Windows user, so.
I wouldn't call you filthy. I'll just say I'm sorry.
I'm a bit new to this topic, but I would like to know more about the Docker state because I was just curious about maybe a manager above it, Kubernetes. I don't know if you hear from it.
Yeah, Kubernetes is a further step of Docker, as far as I know. So Docker is part of what they use, but they are a very upscaled sort of, well, I'm talking under correction. I didn't look at it in depth. I just skimmed over a few things.
Sorry, the Kubernetes part is the manager of Docker containers so that you can scale out easily. So that would be a nice thing. So if we can manage to get Docker up and running like it should, then Kubernetes should be the next step to make scalable web spaces. So
yeah,
I think it's very interesting to know more. Yes.
Yeah, I probably need to, well, look into the Kubernetes myself. I'm a bit reluctant at times, sort of just paying attention to things that really intrigue me. And so I have postponed looking at that. This current tool really manages the containers locally very well. And it also manages it very well in a live system. So as you can see, this website we were on earlier, where is it now? This one. It automatically gets encrypted with Let's Encrypt. And to demonstrate that to you, I could actually go to my server and quickly sign in. And then spin up a new container for us just for demonstrating the functionality. So let's call it JUG. So it's and use this domain. If I just click yes on this, okay, and
how do we register the domains then? It's already there.
the domain, I have forwarded the domain here to the server with an asterisk, so I don't need to go back and set up a new domain. I basically forward this domain here, okay, to my server.
To IP, yes.
So now if I click on that link, wait, let's say open link or faster. So it shows us it says bad gateway because I'm doing it too quickly. It takes a moment for the download things, and so we need this information to set up the container. We need this password, and I've made a tutorial which is available online. And that sort of brings me to a topic which I almost forgot. I want to encourage you to share with others to join us on Telegram. Telegram has become our channel of communication because we haven't had a lot of interaction on Glip. Glib wasn't too many of the people using JCP is not actually interested in joining Glib. So we moved our main channel to Telegram, and I just shared the link here in the group. And so I would really encourage you, if you join this channel, your details, your contact details and stuff is still hidden. Nobody sees it. There is a group attached to this channel, whereas if you join that and you've got the permission set to share your information, then there it will share it. Only if you've got it set that way. But that's, for me, technical. I'm sort of aware of how to set my privacy management in Telegram. Others may not think about that. So I explained that maybe too much. But this is a easy way for you to stay up to date with all the latest news. Now, what is nice about this channel is you can open it in the browser, that same link, and then instead of having the browser open Telegram, you could actually click on Preview Channel, and then it gives you a link, sort of you can watch without Telegram. You can watch our announcements and follow, sort of like a blog link, you know. And so why I'm talking about that is because this whole announcement of the tool I've been using tonight for Docker, it's one of the latest announcements. And here is the link to the YouTube tutorial which I mentioned earlier. So you could basically follow these announcements without using Telegram. And so all you need to do that is just add an S to the URL. So I posted the second URL is to follow it like a blog. Anyway, that is the new place for staying up to date with the JCB announcements. And I'm actually planning on integrating this. Some of you may know that JCB has this VDM board and Pro board next to the compiler on its system. And I'm thinking about adding another tab here, calling it Telegram channel, and actually sort of feeding the latest updates from the Telegram channel into that. Anyway, so we'll still look at whether that is realistic. And therefore to get to the script, where is it? To get access to this script, you basically need to go to this URL here. But I do share that information in the tutorial. Okay, so that's how you can get to that. Sorry, did I drop the question? No, I was busy with this. Okay, let's try again this JUG refresh here. So
Yeah, Telegram comes in between, so that's
yeah,
fine.
sorry guys, my mind.
Enthusiastic,
So
yes.
what happened here is we now ran our little script on our server. It produced for us this little output, and then we can now use this information to actually finish the installation. And what this installation does is it creates on the server, so I've got the server mounted to my system, so via a Linux mounting mechanism. So on the system, it created a new folder called JUG. And inside this folder, it has created a Joomla folder and a database folder, which means that it has made the image persistent, so that actually the files and the database is stored persistently in your file system. And should you take down this website, the container itself, you will not lose those files, and you could actually then spin it up again later. So you could take it down when you're not working on it and spin it up and work on it again. And so that is part of its, freedom. And then for interest, because maybe some of you don't realize this, but even this application that is running here is running inside that Docker instance system that I am demonstrating. So all that I did is I wrote my own file manually, but it's still managed through that system. So that if I actually click OK here and I go to Joomla containers and I say edit, enable edit available containers, you see there is git.vdm.dev. There is the actual Git container. I'm not going to show you that. But that is still inside the same system managing that container, actually. Which means this also is then updated and stored persistently. So if I go back one folder here, there is my whole Git system. Everything on it is right there stored in one folder, which is really convenient. I can't tell you the tremendous freedom I now have. Now, I'm using a tool called Restic. Maybe some of you have heard of it before. This one here. And it's available on GitHub. Rest. I forked it because I think it's too good to be public. So if they some way somewhere decide to take it away, then I am ready. Anyway, this is the best backup tool I have ever seen. Now, obviously, it's not Joomla; it's completely outside in the operating system. But it integrates with Wasabi. Now, Wasabi is also maybe something you don't know about. It is the most affordable backup solution I have also ever seen. And in comparison with, now I don't work for them, I don't have any shares here, so but in comparison with other systems that offer this S3 containerized backup storages, if we move our let's say our amount of storage we want, then comparing to other providers, this is extremely affordable, and yet it downloads and uploads doesn't affect that much its actual space. So for 1 terabyte of space, it's costing you $6 a month. It's really, it's so having said that, I'm using Restic to securely back up this whole project folder. So this whole project folder, all of it, every day gets backed up to Wasabi with this Restic tool. Now this Restic tool does what is known as incremental backup, fully encrypted. So it only backs up what's changed, and it encrypts it on your system before pushing it up to Wasabi. So whatever is stored in Wasabi is heavily encrypted and unrecognizable, and can only be again opened through this tool and your password if you need. So I'm planning to make a tutorial on how this would work alongside this Docker script that I released, because I feel like I have stumbled upon a lot of convenience, and I want to share it with you guys. If you find it useful, then I'm grateful, and if not, sorry for wasting your time. Okay, so basically we demonstrated how quickly we can deploy a container, and then we explained some of the persistence, and then we explained how that can be backed up, and now, you saw me earlier working on that live system. There we are using this open SSH container. Now, how does that work? Well, you say new container, you choose any port that you not 22. I'm just going to do a port that won't work. And you choose a username. It should be a sort of generic, so maybe James or something. And then again, and you can read this more carefully. And then it gives you the option to add keys. I'm currently going to choose myself. And then it asks you what part of the server do you want to link to this container. So you can now change the folder. I'm basically targeting projects. So if I click yes here, it shows me all the folders in that folder. And then I can mount any of those folders into that container. And then I can mount that container to my local development system. And it does it in a way that doesn't affect the user permissions of the files, and it doesn't give me access to anything else on the server. Although I have SSH access, which is usually something that people don't want to give you. But with this approach, you can actually secure the person in this container and only mount the files into the container which you would like them to have access to. And the advantage of this is you can have multiple developers working on one system, and none of them puts any of your other systems at risk. So within a shared developing environment, this is heaven in a way. This is really powerful and very convenient. So if you have 4 developers working on one JCB project and you want to give them access to the actual files on the system, you can create a container like this for each of them, and you can mismatch different systems. You can say, okay, I want to give this developer access to these 3, and then the next developer you give them access to the other, and so like that. And then all they need to give you to start using this is a public key. So you just need to get a public key from them, which they generate on their end. So they just give you the public key, you add that to the server, which I will demonstrate in the tutorial how that is done. And then you spin up this container, use that public key, and they get access to your system without getting access to your system. Now, for me, this is something I've been trying to achieve for nearly a year. And once I figured out how to do this, I know this is going to become something everyone would like to use. Because it's a problem with, I've worked with some of you in projects, and then we have this shared JCB, and then the kind of things we need to do to get to the actual files means that we can't use our IDEs. We can't really use our normal developing environment. Whereas with this approach, all that is now taken care of. You can mount the folders to your system, even if it's a Mac, even if it's a Windows system. You can now mount it to your system, and you can work with it in your system the way you want to work with it, and not be tied into the way I'm doing it. Because I'm basically, through this method, not giving you access to the database. I'm only giving you access to the files. So you could still edit the files on your system and refresh this website on the live system and immediately see the change live. And that's the convenience of this. Okay, so I'm going to just continue here, and I'm not going to deploy this now, but that's sort of giving you an idea. Okay. Guys, that was a lot. Anything more? Otherwise, I'll have to call it a day. We're 2 minutes out from our 2 hours. And I missed the other meeting. Yeah. Tom, you've been very quiet.
Sorry?
I say you've been very quiet.
I had a lot of background noise here with the kids, but I listened and I took everything.
Yeah. I hope it's
my friend on the hoop, he knows all about this Docker shit stuff, so he's gonna set that up.
Oh, good.
And I'll teaching JCB and Joomla.
Yeah, I really want to try this, that Docker thing, so I would create a Ubuntu server by myself and just try it if I can do it, so that was fun. I'm very excited about it because Docker is a nice tooling.
How good is your bash, your shell scripting? I'm trying to. How good is your shell scripting? I'm trying
a bit, but
I want to encourage you that if you look at how I achieved some of this behavior, the code is open, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is although it's called version 3, it's called that because we have really made a lot of changes over the process of the project. So if you look in the commits, there was a time around this moment, if you look at the source code, where this project was still many files. So I started the project as a multiple file system, so you would trigger different files, get different behaviors. And then I found that will probably be problematic for some people. And so basically I then made it a single script. So by today we have one file, everything living in it. So that is the better bash approach, which again is not how everyone else might want to do things in other languages. But here is the YAML, you know, how am I building the traffic container, for example? There's everything that's blue. Then how am I building the portrainer container? And here at how am I doing Docker for Joomla? So this is sort of the beginning of it. And you know, I am using simply a placeholder to take the SSL integration out when it's running locally. And otherwise I'm just leaving it in. I'm really just making use of traffic to take care of all the pain. And that's why it looks so easy, because traffic is doing the madness of proxying and managing the container sort of linkages for us. And it's doing it with one simple command. If I scroll up to it, it's this one. Not that one. Yeah, it is actually in the live system when you are using the SSLs, then this is the command that actually makes it all work. Obviously all of them together, but this is the main. Anyway, so whenever you find room for improvement, please come and tell me. I'm not. I don't get angry when someone corrects me. I do get sad though.
yeah, okay.
But
I can read through it, but I will just skip through it one time. Then we'll go over it.
Yeah. So I started
nice
a new convention called Trust, and what the Trust convention gives us, it gives us a way that we have both a GUI approach and a command line approach. So that means you can either use the script in the GUI way, the way I demonstrated tonight, or you can use it by passing commands to it directly, and then it just executes that. And you scroll to the bottom. Here it is. Here is the actual help menu for the command. So you could type in octo. Wait, this one's froze on us. Octo -h, and then it gives you a printout of all the direct commands. You sort of set values directly without using the GUI. Now this isn't completely stable, but it's already, I tested all of it, but sometimes it may still ask you yet another question. So I would like to grow this area so that you can, again, another script, use this script without using its own GUI, So that's sort of where I'm going. I'm just sharing that with you. I mean, maybe it's not everyone. But yeah, so besides PHP, Bash is one of my favorite languages. So I really enjoy working with it. Okay, that's
quite big development. You've made this one. It's quite good.
So what you need to do now is to create a GUI for us to develop our own Bash scripts. Same you did with component builder, you know?
Yes,
we just play with drag and drops and so on. And
Shouldn't be too hard, right?
Bash script like that.
And we really expect you to do that in 2 weeks instead of 6 months. I mean,
Indeed.
since you are such a programming genius, I mean.
Ready, set, go.
Throw down the
listen,
December 14th.
I appreciate your encouragement here. Thank you.
Guys, I need to go. I've got a client meeting now. Bye-bye.
Okay, Tom, cheers. Go.
Bye guys.
No,
So,
kidding.
Daniel, I really like to ask that you help me finish the routers that we're going to talk.
I will help as far as I can. You know, I have some holidays between the 24th and the 1st of January. So between these dates, I'm available for...
That's 6 full days. You can work on it. Great. Who needs Christmas?
Yeah, so I don't want to. I mean, I know you're quite busy. When I look at, I mean, listen, guys, the amount of things that Emmanuel has done with HTTP is just phenomenal. You know, I feel like, wow, if I had done maybe just half, you know.
No, I'm just a little monkey. I'm just clicking one button and producing results.
Yeah, right. How did you tell? How did you put it to me the other day? You're absolutely in a dream world, my friend.
I do.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we need a let's say a solid 3 hours to have a video channel open and hammer it. Okay. So basically, two of us, we must just decide which day we have 3 hours free. I know that's impossible.
Sure. You just tell me when you are available. I just gave you my time frame and just.
Now I know I
Sure.
really have a kind of
Work together.
an answer to that. And why I say 3 hours is because I want to make sure I cover all the bases and not look back and say, oh no, we missed something. So that will be wonderful if we can get because that is the only real big. If we don't need history and we don't need there's 2 or 3 things we don't need. We only want a URL4 extension. Then the router is the only part left to actually really pay attention.
Guys, can I break in because I need to leave also?
Okay.
I want to thank you for my first time here because I was just joined by Tom. I would like to hear more from you guys and maybe there's some pro membership in the future. I don't know, but first thank you for meeting you all and it was a nice meeting to join. So very exciting and nice to learn more about the JCB project. So, thank you.
Nice to have you on board.
Yeah, I hope to see you around.
Okay guys, happy development and till next time.
Next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, so that's basically that. If there is anything else any of you would like to ask me, then I'm going to call it a day as well.
Yeah. Same here.
Just don't forget my
Yes,
quotation.
I'll get back to you, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because you can charge my customer 1 or 2 days more, and put it inside JCB also.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
Now
you
I'll
have,
get back to
you
you on
have
that.
3 days. You have three days to find. You can already take 2 of this project.
Aha. Yes, yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, my wife always says I'm a time traveler, and you cannot trust me on time.
We made.
She says,
Well,
I
you know-
would say it will take me quickly. I'll quickly do this, and then it takes me a day.
You know, we made projects together, and we were on time.
Yeah, but
You know.
we both
Time
know
is
when-
relative anyway, guys. So.
No, I mean, I try to keep my customer happy, right? So, I think one of my biggest challenges is sort of getting interested in something and then really going way out into that area and spending way too much time on that side. That's one of my, yeah.
You know, that's why JCB exists. So you don't need to apologize for that.
That's true, but it's also a problem. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It was lovely having you, and thank you also for your support. I've done it with you guys. Good.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you guys.
Bye guys. See you on the next
Bye-bye.
meeting.
Ciao.